By the end of the 18th century, most battles around the world featured firearms, so it wasn't too unusual when, in 1826, the victors of one engagement captured a stash of several thousand cartridges and powder from the camp of the losing side. What was unusual was that the cartridges were made of solid gold, and the powder that filled them was gold dust. That was only part of the spoils, which also included a large assortment of jewels, gold-hilted swords, gold ornaments, and the wives and daughters of the defeated leader, the king of the Ashanti. Anywhere else in the world, the literal king's ransom that followed the Battle of Dodoa would have quickly become an international legend, on par with memories of what the Spanish had squeezed out of the Inca and Aztec emperors. In West Africa, however, the Hall of Gleaming Treasure was remarked on only by a European observer. For everyone else in the area, it was pretty much business as usual. From the 11th to the 17th centuries, these people had been producing and exporting most of the world's total gold supply. Sometimes as much as two-thirds of the world's gold, for which read money, was under the control of the kings and emperors of successive West African states that competed to dominate gold mining and trade. Gold was a large-scale industry in the region, but not an especially ancient one. The native people had known for many centuries that each heavy rain washed a gleaming yellow metal out of the river gravels, but they thought very little of it. For them, gold had no value. Copper was the metal they prized the most. Only in the 8th century AD, when the Muslims arrived with a different set of cultural norms and metallic preoccupations, did the local inhabitants start to see value in producing gold and selling it to these foreign merchants. Mining began in the Bambouk and Bourré gold fields. After heavy rains, families would set out to dig up newly exposed river gravels and sediments along stream beds and pan out the gold. After paying a hefty fraction of it to the local potentates, the gold mining entrepreneurs would carry gold east or later north into the trading zone. There, they met Sudanese or Berber traders who picked it up in exchange for copper, iron, and most of all, salt, the only one of the three major commodities that could sometimes trade for its own weight in gold. As the merchants brought their newly purchased gold through the desert or semi-desert, they had to pay a part of it in tax whenever they entered a new state, plus another substantial fraction when they left on the other side. That they still profited from this arrangement testifies to the sheer amount of gold they were carrying around and the insatiable demand for it abroad. Of course, it was the middlemen who really made money off this trade. For a couple of centuries by then, the outpost of Kumbi Saleh had been home to some rather enterprising statesmen, and as the trans-Saharan gold caravans got going in the later 8th century, they were quick to seize the advantage and secure their realms. The Empire of Ghana quickly spread around the western Sahel, carefully enveloping all the major trade routes going north. Berber merchants from the Mediterranean coast of Africa pooled resources to fund caravans of up to 10,000 camels, each of which could carry somewhat under 300 pounds of cargo. These were partially loaded with expensive trade goods and headed south, accumulating slabs of salt and ingots of copper along the way in exchange for the initial goods. At the borders of the Ghana Empire, the merchants paid a heavy import tax, traded their salt and copper for gold, and packed the gold back northward after paying a similarly heavy export tax. Conservative estimates suggest that in the later Middle Ages, gold exports from West Africa amounted to 3.5 tons each year, comprising more gold than was available in all of Europe at the time. By the end of the 8th century, the Muslim world had nicknamed the Empire of Ghana the Land of Gold. This was a bit of a misnomer, since Ghanaian territory did not actually extend to most of the gold fields, but the emperors didn't exactly see the need to tell everyone where their money was coming from. They were also careful not to release so much gold for export as to crash the market and lower its value. The amounts they let through, vast as they were, represented only a fraction of what came in. The proportions varied over time, but at one point the emperor laid claim to all nuggets larger than about an ounce, along with a sizable fraction of the gold dust. While some was exported, most of it stayed to make ornaments and status goods for the elite. A Muslim traveler from the 11th century commented on their prevalence. Not only did the Ghanaian emperor adorn himself with gold necklaces, bracelets, shoes, and a golden hat, but even the royal dogs wore collars made of gold. Golden staffs and gold-handled swords were symbols of religious and royal might. More than that, gold jewelry functioned for everyone as a type of portable savings account. Both men and women covered themselves with as many heavy earrings, bracelets, necklaces, and rings as they could afford. As wealthy as the Empire of Ghana was, it looked positively impoverished next to its successor, the Mali Empire. Around the 1230s AD, an exiled Mandinka leader named Sunjata Keita expanded his territory from another former gold trading outpost in the Western Sahara, this one the city of Timbuktu. Taking over much of the former Empire of Ghana, he reorganized and expanded the region's economy. Naturally, gold and salt remained the preferred media for long-distance trade and high-value commerce, as they had been for centuries. Some of the gold even began to get through to Europe, starved of the yellow metal for several hundred years. 13th century rulers in Italy, Spain, and points between began to acquire North African dinar coins made with Malian gold and remint them, often just replacing the Islamic inscriptions with Christian ones. By the mid-1300s, an estimated two-thirds of the gold in circulation in the entirety of Africa, Asia, and Europe had come across the Sahara. Controlling and taxing that trade made the Mali emperor one of the richest men ever to walk the earth. Rough approximations place the net worth of Mansa Musa, the grandson of Sunjata Keita, at somewhere around 400 billion in today's dollars. While that's probably an overestimate, there's no doubting that his wealth was somewhere around what you would get if Jeff Bezos married Elon Musk. In 1324, Musa, who had converted to Islam, went on pilgrimage to Mecca. Stories have it that his caravan included 100 camels carrying 300 pounds of gold dust apiece, plus an escort of 500 slaves who each carried a 6-pound gold staff, for a total of 33,000 pounds of gold, give or take a little pocket change. Taking seriously the Quranic injunction to give generous alms, Musa distributed this gold with such a lavish hand that a wave of inflation followed him across Africa. In Cairo, his largesse caused the value of the dinar to drop by 20%. The Egyptian economy took 12 years to recover. But there was too much gold in West Africa for control of the supplies to go unchallenged for very long. Throughout this time, yet another Saharan gold trading outpost was strengthening into a city-state, and in the middle 1400s, this Songhai Empire overthrew the Mali. The Songhai largely continued the earlier system of controlling some of the gold fields and monopolizing the trade from the rest. They also had to fend off an increasing number of other groups vying for a piece of the auriferous action. The competition was fierce. As an example, it was customary for victorious chiefs of the Akan to decorate their royal regalia with golden casts of the jawbones of defeated enemies. In this contest between West African powers, the decisive winners were the Europeans. The Muslims of Al-Andalus had told the Spanish and Portuguese about the fabulous gold wealth of Western Africa, a tantalizing prospect to the Portuguese Prince Henry, a man with a cash flow problem and a passion for shipbuilding. He sponsored an intensive research and development program that led in the mid 1400s to the invention of a new type of ship, the caravel. Unlike the galleys common up to that time, a caravel was sturdy enough to withstand Atlantic seas, and its lateen sail rigging enabled it to maneuver to windward. Routine voyaging between Western Europe and Western Africa was suddenly possible, and overland trade was no longer the only way to obtain vast amounts of gold. At the same time, new mines were opening across Europe and Asia, cutting the West African share of the international gold market to around 10%. That was still enough to fund a powerful state, but not two of them. And in the 16th century, the Songhai had to dispute control of the gold trade with a resurgent and expanding dynasty in Morocco. In 1591, the North African Saadi forces conquered Timbuktu and destroyed the Songhai Empire, capturing golden loot that earned the Moroccan Sultan the honorific title of the Golden. But his triumph was short-lived. More and more gold was being carried north by European caravels instead of Berber camels, and there was no way to stem the decline. The Akan, who mined the southern gold fields and traded gold and slaves directly with the Europeans, would continue to prosper into the 19th century until the gold wealth of their land attracted the attention of another empire from overseas. But for the rest of Western Africa, the Golden Age had reached an end long before.